Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into what is essentially the nervous system of our entire digital world.
The modern data center.
Exactly. These places are just enormous, they're incredibly complex, and honestly, they're vital to everything you do online. Keeping them running requires, well, operational
It
excellence.
really does. And our source material for this deep dive is a fantastic shortcut into that world. We've got the core knowledge points from practice questions for the Certified Data Center Facilities Operations Manager exam, the CDFOM.
So this isn't academic theory, not at all. We're getting into the 10 most critical real-world concepts that certified pros have to master.
Right, it's all about maintaining reliability, sustainability, safety. This is basically the operational playbook just distilled down.
And these concepts, they cover everything from keeping people safe inside to measuring the facility's impact on the planet.
So our mission today is really to pull out these key nuggets.
Yeah, so you can quickly get a handle on what keeps the world's most critical infrastructure resilient. Whether you actually work in IT or you just need your cloud apps to work, which is pretty much everyone, right?
It's everyone.
Understanding these concepts is just key to grasping how it all stays online. Okay, let's unpack this, and let's start where any serious operation has to: protecting people.
You have to. You can't even talk about data center safety without first addressing the dangers. I mean, we're talking about massive power systems.
And that takes us right to our first core concept. It's focused squarely on protecting personnel during maintenance. The lockout-tagout procedure, or LO.
Loto, yep.
So when we see this huge electrical gear, these enormous cooling systems, why is LO the absolute foundational procedure?
Well, because a data center is just full of hazardous energy. And I don't just mean electricity. The main goal of LDO is to prevent the accidental startup of equipment while someone is working on it.
Okay.
Think about a giant fan unit or a big transformer. If you're near that equipment or inside it and it suddenly turns on, the results can be catastrophic.
So it's more than just flipping a switch to off, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's about physically isolating that energy source and then proving it's locked.
Oh, okay.
The lockout part is a literal physical lock. It stops a circuit breaker or a valve from being operated.
Yeah.
The tag out is the warning tag you attach to that lock.
Got it.
And this is so critical for preventing burns, crush injuries from moving parts. Even things like stored energy, like from heavy springs or hydraulics, from being released when you don't expect it. It is the gold standard for safety in these places.
That makes perfect sense. And it leads us nicely from protecting people inside the facility to protecting the data and systems from anyone trying to get in.
Right, unauthorized entry.
Our second key concept is a physical security control called a man trap. Now, I have to say, that sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It really does.
But what is its actual primary function in a data center?
It's incredibly effective and pretty much mandatory for any sensitive zone. And while it sounds all technical, the function is actually very simple. It enforces single-person access.
And the sources confirm that exact point. The man trap's primary function is to prevent tailgating by controlling access for one person at a time.
That's the entire story right there. And man trap is basically two interlocking doors. It physically stops someone from holding the door open for an unauthenticated person to just follow them inside.
That's what they call tailgating.
Yep. So if your policy says only authenticated staff get into the server room, the man trap is the physical thing that makes sure that policy is followed. No exceptions. It's a critical choke point.
That's a great transition from protecting people and physical assets to protecting the infrastructure itself from, wear and tear. Moving into our second segment, let's look at maintenance. Our third insight is all about avoiding unplanned downtime. Predictive maintenance, we've all heard of reactive, fixing what's broken, and preventative.
They're fixing things on a schedule.
But what exactly defines this predictive approach?
It's the smart approach. It's the difference between, say, replacing a part because it's the first of the month, or replacing it because, with data-driven certainty that it's about to fail next week.
So the technical definition we're pulling from the sources is that predictive maintenance is maintenance performed based on real-time condition monitoring. What kind of monitoring are we talking about here?
We're really talking about applying data science to the building itself.
Okay.
This means you have sensors on all your critical equipment, chillers, generators, UPS systems, And these sensors are analyzing things like vibration signatures, oil quality, heat patterns, load trends.
So they're looking for signs of trouble.
Exactly. By spotting tiny deviations and analyzing these trends over time, the operations manager can schedule maintenance before the component fails. It just massively improves reliability and, frankly, saves a ton of money by avoiding that catastrophic unscheduled downtime.
So we've moved from fixing things when they break to actively preventing the break.
Right. But things do still break.
Of course. And when a major incident does happen, we get to our fourth key concept, root cause analysis, or RCA. What's the main purpose of doing an RCA after something goes wrong?
I think the mistake a lot of organizations make is they only focus on the immediate trigger. The human error, the specific part that broke. RCA forces you to go deeper.
And the primary goal, according to all the best practices, is to identify the fundamental cause and prevent future occurrences.
It is all about continuous improvement. It's about getting more mature in your operations. You're not looking to blame the technician who flipped the wrong switch.
You're asking why they could flip it.
Precisely. Why was that technician even able to access that switch? Why wasn't OLDO used correctly? Why did our training manual allow for that confusion? RCA is famous for the 5 whys method, where you just keep digging deeper and deeper to find the systemic flaw. That's what builds real long-term resilience.
That's fantastic. Okay, we've covered internal safety, external security, and how to manage equipment. Let's pivot now, segment 3, into environmental factors, both the small and the large scale.
Good idea.
Our fifth key takeaway deals with an invisible threat, contamination risk. We all know data centers are temperature controlled, but why is air purity controlling gas and particle contamination just as important?
This one is so often overlooked, I think, because you can't see the damage as it's happening.
Right.
Everyone worries about heat, but corrosion is like a silent killer of expensive hardware.
And the operational rule here is crystal clear. You control contamination to prevent premature hardware failure and corrosion.
Absolutely. If you think about airborne particles, even just regular dust, they can clog up cooling channels, which leads to hotspots. But the gaseous pollutants, things like sulfur or chlorine in the air, they're much more destructive.
How so?
They actually corrode the tiny, sensitive components, especially on circuit boards and connectors. So if you're building a billion-dollar facility, you absolutely have to install high-efficiency air filtration that handles both microscopic dust and chemical threats.
Otherwise, your gear just won't last as long.
Not even close. Your reliability will degrade much faster than you planned for.
That's a critical point. Now, let's step back. From the microenvironment inside a server rack to the macro environment outside.
Sustainability.
Sustainability. Data centers use a staggering amount of power. Our sixth insight is about a specific metric used to measure their environmental stewardship. Which metric measures the carbon footprint relative to the IT energy use?
So most people have heard of PUE, power usage effectiveness. That measures how efficient you are with energy. But PUE doesn't tell you anything about the source of that energy.
And this is where we have to look past just efficiency and towards actual impact. The correct metric here is carbon usage effectiveness, or CUE.
CUE is so important because it directly links the data center's energy use to the greenhouse gases it's responsible for.
How does it do that?
It's calculated by taking the total CO2 emissions and dividing that by the IT equipment's energy consumption. So if a data center has super efficient systems, their PUE might look great. But if they're powered entirely by a coal plant, their CUE will be terrible.
So it's the real measure of their green credentials.
It is. It directly supports all those carbon reduction goals, especially now, with so much pressure on companies to prove they're serious about sustainability.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting as we move into our final segment. Planning, process, and compliance. The blueprints of the operation. Our seventh concept is absolutely foundational for any kind of disaster recovery planning. Recovery Point Objective, or RPO. What does RPO actually define for a business?
Okay, so this one is measured in time, and it's probably the single most important decision the business has to make before an incident ever happens.
And that definition is, RPO defines the maximum acceptable amount of data loss after an incident.
Perfect. And that is the crucial trade-off. If your business says its RPO is, say, 15 minutes, that means if the whole system goes down right now, you can only afford to lose the last 15 minutes of data.
Which forces you to act a certain way.
It does. It forces operations to have backups or replication running constantly, maybe every 5 minutes. But if your RPO is, I don't know, 4 hours, your backup schedule can be way less frequent and therefore much cheaper to run. RPO isn't just a technical number. It dictates the cost, complexity, and the whole urgency of your data protection strategy.
Got it. So the higher the RPO, the more data you're willing to lose, but the less it costs to maintain.
The business has to weigh that risk.
Our eighth insight looks at a critical moment in a facility's life. When a new data center, or maybe a big upgrade, goes from being a construction project to a live, functioning reality. This is the handover to operations phase. Why is this specific moment so critical?
This is the point where the project team leaves and the operations staff has to take over. If this handover goes badly, you can end up with this magnificent, expensive facility that nobody knows how to run safely or efficiently.
So it's critical because it ensures the operational staff is prepared to manage the new facility.
Exactly. The building might be finished, but the handover means the ops team has received all the documentation, the SOPs, the emergency plans, and critically, they've gotten extensive hands-on training.
They also have to sign off on it, right?
They do. They have to formally accept the systems, proving they work as designed. A smooth handover just guarantees a low-risk switch from project delivery into that steady, reliable day-to-day operation.
Speaking of procedures, that brings us to number 9, day-to-day consistency. Standard operating procedures, or SOPs. Why are these detailed documents considered the backbone of data center reliability?
Because they remove variability. And in operations, variability always equals risk. SOPs are basically the institutional memory of the entire facility.
And the main benefit, as our sources state, is to ensure consistency, safety, and quality in recurring operations.
That consistency is everything. I mean, imagine a task like transferring the power load from the city grid to the backup generators.
High stress situation.
Very high stress. It involves dozens of precise steps. An SOP ensures that every single technician does that complex procedure in the exact same documented sequence, no matter what shift it is or how experienced they are. They don't just ensure quality, they are essential for compliance, for proving you operate according to standards.
And finally, our 10th insight, which brings us to accountability and trust. The benefit of an external audit versus one done by your own team.
In today's world, where everyone demands transparency, that outside validation is just. It carries immense weight.
The key benefit of that external audit is that it provides an independent and objective validation of compliance.
That independence is the difference maker. When you do an internal audit, you're essentially grading your own homework.
Right.
But when an impartial third party comes in and does the assessment, it just boosts the credibility and transparency of the results for everyone, your customers, your investors, your regulators. If a big bank is trusting you with their data, they want to see that objective proof that your SOPs and your safety protocols are actually being followed. Now let's end where we talked about data protection.
Mm-hmm.
We define the recovery point objective RPO as the maximum acceptable amount of data loss in a professional setting.
Right.
So if you take that metric and you apply it to your own personal digital life, your photos, your documents, your whole digital history, what RPO are you actually operating under right now for your most important data?
Right.
And is that truly acceptable to you?
Something to mull over until our next deep dive.